Like they call it the doghouse.
Okay, this is the one we've all been waiting for. Devin Haney versus Vasily Lomachenko for all of the marbles in the 135-pound division in Las Vegas. And a fight that has been a long time in the making, a fight that's been talked about for a while. If you listen to Devin Haney's old interviews, he's been talking about fighting Lomachenko for quite a bit now. And now we're finally going to see it. And I tell you what, in a division, or in a sport, I should say, where you don't really see the best fight the best, this lightweight division, 135 pound, maybe slash 140 pounds. We are seeing it. The young guys do seem to be wanting to fight each other. We saw Tank and Garcia fight, and even though technically it wasn't really a big fight in terms of the 135 pound division, it was more of a big fight in general. You know, we didn't see any belts on the line. We didn't really see any mandatories or whatever. But what we did see was two guys. When you think of Haney, Lomachenko, Shakur, you think of Tank and you think of Ryan Garcia. And yeah, an intriguing fight, this one. It's a classic one of the older boxer who was a great champion once against the younger champion. But this one's a bit different because unlike some of the older champions, Lomachenko, I believe, still has a lot left in him in this sport. I think he's very hungry to try and become undisputed. He's wanted to be undisputed for a long time. You've heard him speak about it for a while. And stylistically, this is an extremely intriguing fight. More intriguing to me than what, Tank and Garcia was. Because I always felt personally that that Tank was going to win that fight. But with this one, it's different. Because this one, initially when it got made, I kind of felt Haney would have the advantage being the younger guy. And, being just physically bigger as well. But the more you think about this one, it really is an intriguing stylistic matchup. I don't think either has ever fought one like the other. Loma's fought some real good fighters in his time, but I don't think he's ever fought somebody with the size and even like the sharpness of Devin Haney. I think it's a very intriguing fight. And even though Loma's 35 and Haney is 24, I do think that there's still so much that Loma has in there that I don't think the age will be a massive factor in this one. And yeah, very intriguing fight stylistically, like I said. If we go, first of all, with looking at Lomachenko and his last few opponents, he obviously fought Jermaine Ortiz. Last fight got in the unanimous decision. Fought Richard Comey before that, got a fantastic performance in that one and got a unanimous decision. It was at one point, Lomachenko just played with Richard Comey, and I really rate Richard Comey, but it didn't shock me because Lomachenko was Lomachenko, but Comey just did not know what to do against him, and it shows. With Lomachenko, I genuinely do feel sorry for his opponents at times, what he does to them, and it was the same against Nakatani, who he fought before Comey, where, again, made him, Nakatani, in that one, obviously, Loma did get the TKO, and he did knock Comey down in, next Comey down in their bout, and at Madison Square Garden, and even begged the corner to stop the fight at one point, but Comey soldiered on to his credit and did well. And obviously before Nakatani fought Teofimo Lopez and lost. So Lomachenko, one fight in 2020, which nobody could blame. It was a very weird year. 2 fights in 21 and 1 fight in 22, and now he's having 1 fight here, or his first fight in 23, hopefully. Loma used to be extremely active. If you look down here, in 2019 he had 2 fights against Crawler and against Luke Campbell. So again, not a particularly crazy schedule. But in 2018, he also fought twice. 2017, he fought 3 times, and 2016, he fought twice. And then if we go all the way back to 2015, he fought twice. So he's basically fought twice a year. But the difference with Lomachenko, obviously, we look at the almost numbers of him fighting a year. But if you actually look at his activity, really, he fought Jose Pedraza in 2018. Then he fought Crawler in April time. And then he fought Luke Campbell then 4 months after that. And then he fought Teofimo back end of 2020, which again you can't really blame. And it's these sort of ones recently, the Ortiz, the Comeys, and Nakatani, where I feel as if he's sort of his activity's waned, but I think, he's not a champion. He's not having to defend his belt, so I think there's a lot of things that go with that. But Lomachenko, one of the greats, a guaranteed future Hall of Fame, somebody who really has brought something new, I think, to the sport of boxing. A wizard at times in there. The Matrix is a great word for him because he's almost in front of you and then he's to the side of you. You know, he brought a lot of things in boxing which nobody had seen. And some people didn't like it. A lot of people felt like, you do that against a new fighters, maybe they catch you. But, Lomachenko was able to really utilize this, and his footwork and a lot of things he's done, I think, is really he's brought. I appreciate good fighters and what they bring. Whether it's someone like an Errol Spence who will break you down with body shots, whether it's a Tank Davis who has the ability to knock you out, will slowly press you. Even someone like Deontay Wilder who, with all his faults, he lands that right hand and you are gone. I appreciate all types of styles, and Lomachenko's the same. Same with Floyd back in the day. Now with Devin Haney, I'm going to talk about. And for me, stylistically, boxing isn't just reduced to one style. There's so many different ones, and I think Lomachenko has brought something unique there. But yeah, amazing fighter though, Lomachenko. This, I think, is his biggest test in his career so far. I don't really think, if I look at the likes of Linares, it was a tough fight. Comey, tough one. Luke Campbell, again, these are all good fighters. Pedraza was a very tough one. Nicholas Walters was a hard one. I remember thinking when he fought Rigondeaux that maybe Rigo would have done something to him, but he was just way too big and bullied him. But yeah, it was a pretty for Lomachenko. His record is very good, but I think you need. I think this fight against Haney really could. I think his legacy is already cemented in boxing, but I think he would do it even more. But yeah, an incredible fighter though. And going on to the champion, if you look at Devin Haney, his last fights, obviously he fought George Kambosos twice. Fought in 2022 on the 10th of the 16th, the 16th of the 10th, which obviously was in October. And then before that, fought Kambosos on the 5th of, I'm off the count now, June. I'm thinking, sometimes these numbers, they flip the American way. But he fought Kambosos twice. Before that, fought Jojo Diaz. And then Linares before that, Gamboa before that. So Haney, another one to his credit, very active. 2 fights, if you look at his record here. 2 fights in 2022, both against Kambosos. 21, he fought Jojo Diaz and Linares. 2020, only fought Gamboa. 2019, he had 4 fights, which people may look at that. He's a young fighter, he should be fighting a lot, but you'd be surprised, not many fighters do. So, yeah, fought a lot in 2019. Alfred Santiago, Saki Adulev, Antonio Moran, and then Nagini, I believe. Obviously, and if you look back before that, he's obviously got other fights in 2018 and 17. Haney's a fighter who's really been boxing for a long, long time. I think it was, he turned pro very early. I don't know what his amateur record was, but Haney is someone who has slowly been building his skill and is someone who has had the spotlight on him quite early, but not in a Ryan Garcia, Tank Davis way where they've got a huge following. But Haney's been on big cards, big shows, and now he's at a point, 29-0, 15 KOs, and I think he's at a point now where you really need to cement yourself. You need the big fights. He did amazing against Kambosos, but as the greatest victories that was going to Kambosos' hometown, I said before, I respect Kambosos, he's a good fighter, but he wasn't, to me, that even though it was undisputed, it wasn't the big fight for me. The Teofimo fight would have been more appealing, but that isn't, Haney's fault. If Teofimo turned up against Kambosos, we may have seen that fight, or we may not have. You never know, because those two, it really felt like Teofimo, he wanted to fight him, but he really, I don't know, I think that Kambosos fight got to his head. I mean, the Lomachenko one got to his head a little bit, Teofimo, and because of that, it kind of, I don't know, I think he just got lost in his mind a bit, Teofimo, and I think as a result, Kambosos took advantage, and now he obviously fighting Haney, and it's funny, these two, Lomachenko and Haney, are somewhat intertwined. They both, obviously, if you look at Lomachenko, lost to Teofimo, and lost his belts to Teofimo, and then Teofimo obviously fought Kambosos. He lost the belts to Kambosos, and then Haney fought Kambosos. So these two may have fought. We're always going to fight, I think, at a certain point anyway. But I think now it's just a good point for both of these guys to fight. And an intriguing fight. Haney, like we said, 24 years old, so very young in his career, so to be undisputed at that age is remarkable. And I think he's a fighter, Haney. I think there's a lot there going for him. He's young. I think he's got very good fundamentals. He isn't somebody who seems to be surrounded by the wrong crowd. Seems to be smart. He knows exactly. It feels like fundamentally I always think for a young fighter, the fundamentals are always the basic thing I always look for. If you know the basics of knowing when to time the jab, hooking off the jab, how to, sort of put your punches and your combinations together, I think it's a good basis to start, because that's when your athletic gifts come through. And Haney, he's not particularly fast with his hands. He has decent speed. Obviously, at 135, they're all quite quick anyway. And his power, I would say, we all know it's not the hardest. He's a 6, 7 out of 10 hitter. He doesn't have the power of a Tank or a Tiafimo or even Ryan Garcia, maybe even Kambosos, to be fair. He's not a hard hitter, Haney. We all know this. Neither is Lomachenko, but Lomachenko overwhelms opponents, and that's sort of where he gets the finishes. Whereas Haney struggles, I think, a lot to really... You kind of saw against Linares as the big fight where he hit him with everything and just couldn't get him out of there. Couldn't hurt him once, and Linares was the one who hurt him. But we will get to that in the sort of breakdown. But yeah, I do like Haney, but I do feel, and I've said this before, that there is a vulnerability to him, which I do think could cost him in the future. But we'll see in this fight. I do think this is the biggest test of his career by far. And you know what? I think a Shakur Stevenson would be a great fight. I think a Tank would be a great fight. I think Ryan Garcia could pose an interesting challenge. But really, I think for Haney, you're not going to find many matchups harder than this, to be honest. Stylistically, Lomachenko, a southpaw who moves the way he does. And there's an advantage, even though he's a smaller guy, Lomachenko. He's very spry. He's not easy to hit. And intriguing matchup though, nonetheless, this one. So we get into the breakdown. Now, I'm going to start off with the former champion, Vasily Lomachenko. Now, Lomachenko, there's a few things in this one. So, Haney against Kambosos did an excellent job of essentially being the matador. And every time Kambosos came near, he clinched very well and was able to sort of he just sort of heads him off. And we all know his biggest weapon is a jab, but he does an excellent job basically of, when you're chasing him, peppering you with shots and staying out of the way and knowing sort of when your big shots are going to come. The amount of times Kambosos would swing and Haney would just duck under. He did it time and time again. And the sort of slower pace fight is what Haney wants, but for Lomachenko, he can fight that too. But I think my first point would be, don't chase if you're Vasily Lomachenko. You don't want to pay into Haney's game. He's a bigger guy anyway, and I think with Haney, if you want to draw him into a firefight, I think chasing him, if you've got the power and the means to do so, could work. But Loma hasn't. Loma's more of a technician in there, and I don't think that would work against Haney. And I think chasing Haney will only lead to him peppering you with that jab, which is his best weapon, and just sort of picking you off at range. I don't really see that as being the appropriate thing for Lomachenko, and he hasn't really got the style, I feel, to implement it either. So I think first thing I would say is don't chase. And second thing, now, the thing about Haney, which we said, is his jab is a vicious jab. Vicious is the wrong word, I'm going to be honest. He's a clean, sharp jab. He's his best weapon. He may be the best jabber in boxing. I think there's a few who have good ones, Shakur Stevenson's got a very sharp one. Crawford's is quite solid. Errol Spence does a lot of his best work off the jab. If you look at then Ryan Garcia's got a very fast jab. Canelo, as great as he is, I said before against Ryder, he doesn't really use that jab as much. And yeah, there's a few guys who do have it in a way, again, decent, but really I think there's not many people who have as sharp as jab as Haney. And I think the problem with Haney, and I've said this a few times, that Haney's problem, in my opinion, is, and like I said, he's susceptible. And I think the problem that I think with Haney, he hasn't got the lateral movement or the footwork, I think, to kind of not get hit. If you look at someone like a Canelo you can hit, don't get me twisted, but when Canelo is in his matrix and you can't touch him, Canelo has like ridiculous lateral movement. He can move his body and just move his head in ways where you just can't touch him. And it's because he's quite athletic, Canelo, even though he's quite stocky. You see this. He's a power puncher. Haney isn't that. He hasn't got that. He's athletic and he has certain gifts, but I don't think he's got that crazy athleticism that... When I think of athleticism, I think of a Boots Ennis who is stupidly fast, high twitch. I think of someone like Tank who's very explosive as well. Tiafimo was amazingly athletic. You've seen him do these backflips and stuff after fights, and the way he moves, how fast he throws his punches, how powerful he is. These are things that I think Haney just isn't... He's a great fighter, just doesn't possess these gifts. So to me, if you haven't got that, you need another thing, and that's the footwork. And Haney, he's tidy footwork, but it isn't, again, like how Shakur Stevenson's footwork is. Shakur controls the range really well, and just you can't touch him most of the time. Haney, you can hit him, and I think this is why I've often felt Haney's good, but he doesn't almost stand out the way I think Shakur Stevenson does. This is why I've always wanted those two to fight, and I think this is why, in my opinion, I think most people would actually beat, at this moment anyway, pick Shakur to beat Haney, because you can't get near him. It's the same with Floyd. Floyd, his footwork was quite flat, but again, Floyd had perfected the Philly shoulder roll, so you couldn't touch him, and he often did a lot of his work against the ropes. Haney likes to be in the middle of the ring, and yeah, he just gets hit quite a bit, Haney, and I think the jab is fast, but he can be quite sloppy at times. So I think for Lomachenko, when Haney throws that jab, he isn't lightning with it where you can't time him. And Lomachenko is no slouch when it comes to his speed either. So I think you shoot that left hand. When Haney throws it, you throw the left hand over it. And I think you will find that Haney is very, very hittable at that point. And one thing about Haney, I really do think he's got a certain gifts. One thing he hasn't got is a good poker face. And he doesn't... In the fights we've seen him hurt, which was the Linares fight, he did the right thing clinching and make sure he didn't get hit anymore. But he was almost imitating a Division 1 wrestler. He was just grabbing him and wouldn't once just take the time to separate. He would... And again, it's the right thing, but it was as if... This is why a lot of people criticize him for the clinching. Which is hilarious because he calls Lomachenko a dirty fighter. I'm not saying Haney is a dirty fighter, but he just does a lot of things, Haney, where it just doesn't fill you with confidence when a fighter does that. Even though a fighter should clinch, you kind of want them to be a bit more diligent in there. And Haney just doesn't do that at times. So I think shooting that left hand over the jab is, for Lomachenko, will be money. And you'll find Haney gets hit a lot with straight shots. And I think that straight left, I think, will be money for Lomachenko. And then the last point for Lomachenko, when he is up close, Haney will throw that jab. I think you look at Haney against Linares, look at Haney against Jojo Diaz. He is in distress, Haney, when you throw quick combinations against him. He doesn't. This is where I say he hasn't got the movement or the footwork. He just has a tendency, I feel, to kind of, I don't know. It's as if when he can see one shot coming, but he can't see it when you throw 3, 4, 5 punches at him. He'll eventually, he will hit him with one. And I think this is why I've kind of always wondered how he would do against a guy like a Tank or a Tiafimo, where can you get out of the way of those shots if they're throwing it? Because there's one thing being a power puncher, but knowing how to box as well, I think is a big, big asset. And I think for Haney, he gets hit a lot in those situations when guys throw it. Look at Linares. Linares caught with a right hand, I think it was. But he did it and then landed a few shots afterward. Again, it's the 3, 4 punches combinations where I think it's a problem. And Lomachenko, it's not going to be easy to do that against a bigger guy. So I would say with Haney, when he's up close, you throw that 1-2. You keep the combination flowing. I don't think Haney, against a guy like Lomachenko, who is as seasoned as he is, will really, I mean, he's in respect for it, but really know what to do. I think he'll struggle in this one if Lomachenko decides to... Like I said, you shoot that left hand over the jab. You don't chase him. And when he's up close, Haney, and you see his hands slightly drop, you throw the 1-2. And I think eventually you'll find that one of these get through. I don't think it may not be enough to hurt Haney, but you'll hit him. And I think that's the big thing that I look at. But I think that's it for Lomachenko. I think if he applies these, I don't know many... I was thinking about what he could do, Lomachenko. I don't think being aggressive is the right thing. And he hasn't got the power, I think, to really... do fight that way anyway. So I think this would be the best approach, in my opinion, if I'm Vasyl Lomachenko. But Then we get to the champion, Devin Haney. Now, Haney's the bigger man in here, and I think he's considerably bigger. And the last big man who Lomachenko fought was Teofimo Lopez. And it's different because Teofimo had that power and the ability to end you with one shot, whereas Haney doesn't have that. You can see Lomachenko was hesitant, but one thing you could see when Teofimo was up close, the size was telling. And Lomachenko, I don't think, could handle it. And I think if you're Haney, you do the same thing. Use the size. When Loma does what I said there, maybe if he throws a bit 1-2 at you, you clinch, you try and muscle and wrestle him around. It's not, I don't like to really encourage clinching, but it's necessary. You want to win, you got to do what you have to do to survive in there. And I think Haney, his best chance, I think, to stifle Lomachenko's attack isn't just to duck out the way all of them and try and be like a Diet Floyd. You need to be smart. I think use what you have. You got the size, and just try and physically bully Lomachenko and make him feel your size in there. And I think you'll see quite early in this one. I think first 2 rounds, if Haney does decide to do this, I think you'll find it might be a boring fight, but it's for him, it's the best, his best option for winning. Let's just put it that way. And the second one, and this is something that Teofimo did do to him, and I use Teofimo as the example because size wise he's big, same as Haney, and he's obviously now fighting at 140, and he also was somebody, same as Haney, young, and had the speed and the wherewithal to sort of impose himself onto Lomachenko. And he struggled. Those 6 rounds, Lomachenko couldn't really handle him. And I think if you're Haney, you want to push Lomachenko back. Do what Teo did. Make it hard for him. You know, I think Lomachenko, against guys who are a bit smaller, he can sort of do that Matador thing and move around them. Against bigger guys, I think he's a bit more wary because I think he realizes these are different. You make one mistake and you're going to get hurt by one of these shots. And Haney doesn't have the power, but I do think Lomachenko will still be on guard and be very wary of this because ultimately you don't want to take these type of risks, especially when you're the smaller guy. He's not like crazily small, Lomachenko. His skill will make up for it, but I just think there's still risks in there that you don't want to make. And the last one I would say for Devin Haney, and like I said, I think clinching when Loma tries to attack, I think pushing him back, Lomachenko back, I think it's a smart thing. And then with Loma being the smaller guy and likes to do this little this thing of obviously stepping to the side, I think shooting that straight right hand to the body, which Lomachenko, because he has quite a high guard, his body is exposed, I think would be a smart one because you want to slow Lomachenko down. Again, the clinch work will do this, but also if you can wear him out to the body, and I'm not saying implement a crazy body attack because that's not what Haney does, but what I'm saying is if you can just be a bit more, you know, when he's coming at you, you find that separation, you jab upstairs and then you shoot the right to the body. I think you'll find a lot more success with that. And I feel you can do this. I think Haney has a lot of gifts going for him. I think he obviously has the reach advantage, and I think with Lomachenko, there's only so much obviously that the skill can make up for. There's still size, there's still reach. There's still a lot of things that do come into a fight, and I think as a boxer, Haney has a lot there. I think, again, he isn't, to me, as skilled as someone like a Shakur Stevenson in terms of, because they both kind of fight in that similar way, but what he does have a good way of sort of getting ahead in fights to Haney. And when he's ahead in fights, you rarely ever see him look like he's going to lose it. He's excellent at kind of racking up rounds, and I think this is where Lomachenko, I think, is going to have to be on guard. But just my advice for what I feel both, I mean, not my advice, what I feel both fighters should do in there. For Loma, you don't chase Haney, you shoot your left hand over the jab, you throw the 1-2 up close, you clinch when Loma attacks, you push Lomachenko back, and you shoot that straight right hand to the body. And I think, to me, like I said, for Loma, I think it's about being smart. It's about trying to catch Haney, making him pay his mistakes. And I think for Haney, it's about using the jab, being aggressive, but not too aggressive, and using the size to and just show that you're the bigger man in there. You use what you got. And yeah, I believe that would be the smart thing for him. But then getting on to my prediction, and this fight is a hard one to pick because stylistically, you know, one's a southpaw first of all, and the southpaw is always a tricky fight. And Haney is very, like I said, vulnerable at times. With Lomachenko, I feel he's 35. He's getting on a bit in his career, but he still has stuff there. But we saw against Teofimo, the bigger man was able to get the better of him. But I don't know. If I look at both of these guys' careers that fight, Haney's very young in his career, even though he's got 29 fights. I sort of look at it and I kind of think with Lomachenko, it's essentially his big last hurrah. And traditionally, when that happens, the younger champion wins. Same thing, sort of, you saw, not a good example, but Luke Campbell against Ryan Garcia. Kind of thought Campbell, this was his last chance, then Garcia got him. Same thing, Klitschko and Joshua. So you may see a very similar fight. I think you'll see a very close fight in this one. But there's just something here. I was picking Haney all the lead up to this fight. But I personally think that Lomachenko is going to take this via decision. And I don't think he stops Haney, but I wouldn't be surprised if he hurts Haney in this fight. Because Haney, like I said, I'm not saying he has a bad chin, but you've seen him wobble by Linares. You've seen him... you've seen Jojo Diaz cause him some discomfort. And he is a very slick fighter. He's fantastic. Jab, good off the back foot, good off the front foot. Has a lot going for him. Physically, very big. Doesn't hit hard, but he has enough there to sort of make you cautious. And I think he hasn't got the... again, you don't... the problem is you don't hit hard, Haney, but he does hit to a point where you don't want to take that risk of just letting him hit you. And I think that's the thing, especially against the bigger guy. But, like I said, there's a susceptibility to Haney, and I said it before. He's excellent at not getting hit, but he isn't as slick as I think people make him out to be. You can hit Haney if you kind of have the right skill set and the right game plan. I don't think stylistically Loma is the perfect one for Haney, but I think him being a southpaw, the way Loma throws his punches, being a smaller guy, you got the speed. And yeah, I think he'll do similar to what Jojo Diaz did, but I think he'll be more aggressive. I think he'll throw that left hand over the jab, like I say. And I think Haney will struggle to make the adjustments, I believe, to really get ahead in this one. If Haney wins, again, I picked him all the way up until this fight. So if he wins, I wouldn't be shocked. But I just, when you just get a feeling, I just think Lomachenko, when I look at all the variables, I feel as if he's got enough to win this one. But it's an intriguing fight nonetheless. I'll do a review after the fight. Haney Lomachenko, Vegas, Saturday night. It should be a good one. And yeah, until next time.